black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Umoja Circle. My name is Keith Smokey Johnson, and I'd like to welcome you to this month's discussion. This is going to be, I'm going to do a part 3 and a part 4 to a topic that I started last month where I did part 1 and 2 of the discussion. And why I'm doing this show and these 4-part series, I know what I've been hearing in the news media and by the conservative part of America, the MAGA Republican type of rhetoric that try to define what is an American and who is an American, and also liberal media types, especially white-facing media types, who constantly say, in my ears, I keep on hearing them say that, oh, America is a divided country, like it's something new that's only unique to the last couple of years, or even since Trump came into office, that America's been divided. But I'm here to say that from again, this is for those of you who are not. Let me just start with this. For those of you who do not know, are new to the show, the Umoja Circle is the African-centered talk show, whose purpose is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find people are working on fiction. And a lot of the things that you're hearing over the media, to me, has been fiction. And these are one of the discussions that I'm going to try to make clear of what is being said in the public airway is based on a fictitious understanding or non-understanding of our experience as black people in America. For us, America has always been divided, and that's what we're still working on. So let's first get that straight. So this part 3 is going to continue where I left off, talking about, I think I left off in part 2 last month, talking about the Kerner Commission. And the Kerner Commission was established by President Lyndon Baines Johnson in July of 1967. One of the things that people don't realize when it comes to a divided nation, we think that what we're seeing today is upsetting or dangerous. And I'm saying, and I'm gonna go further back into the past, that America, for us as people of African descent, as 13 or 12% of the population, America has always been problematic for us. And the Kerner Commission in 1967 and their report that came out in 1968, which I'll talk about a little later, showed that, the government did do its due diligence to find out why black people, many of you familiar with the riots of '65 in L.A., or in Newark, New Jersey, and Chicago. I think they were in 1966. And then the Great Riot in 1967 in July, which shocked the establishment of Johnson into forming this commission. We must understand this history. One thing about truth, you could ignore the truth, but truth is not going anywhere. It's always going to be there waiting for you to discover it. And a lot of things that are being talked about the divisiveness of America and acting as it's just happening in your lifetime, I want to say that from the beginning, like I said in the first show of last month, that this goes back to colonial times, okay, where there were laws called slave codes that said that people that looked like me didn't have the right to anything because we were not even, according to our own Constitution, a whole human being. When you say 3/5 of a human being, you can't have a oneness when you have a people, or a large portion of the population of America, not even looked at as human beings. We weren't even counted as a full human being in the census until 1870. Okay, the Constitution was ratified in 1789. Okay, this formed the kind of government, and the first censuses were there. We were called 3/5 of a human being. You can't say, well, that's not dividing. That's not just that kind of idea that permeates. And we were patient as people, black people. We've always been loyal to this country as black people. We fought in the Revolutionary War. We fought in all the wars that America had, even in the Civil War in the 1860s. But we had to deal with this concept. Even when we went into World War I and World War II, we were still separated. We were called colored troops during the Civil War, even though 200,000 of us fought in it, and many of us died under that flag, and we still were told that we were not capable of flying planes when you had the Red Tails in World War II, or we were sent and given over to the French in World War I when we volunteered to fight in that war that had nothing to do with us as black people, because we had to deal with segregation and Jim Crow in our land. So division has always been part of America. So why are people shocked about the divisiveness today or the rhetoric today? But I'm going to talk about, just don't listen to my words. I want you to listen to a gentleman who was the last surviving member of that Kerner Commission, which was established by President Johnson in July of 1967, because that was the same month that the great Detroit riot happened. Now, before we go to the clip, he had 3 questions that he wanted asked. One of them was he wanted the Kerner Commission to investigate and to come up with solutions. But he wanted 3 distinct questions he had asked. And they were, what happened? Why did it happen? And what can be done to prevent these racist upheavals from happening over and over again, like they were happening at the time? Or these so-called red summers or hot summers of rioting and upheaval. He wanted a commission. That was the dictate of that commission, and they did this job. So let's go to the clip and listen to what Senator Harris, he's the senator who was one of the commissioners that did the investigation at the Kerner Commission. Just listen.
We were not really shocked or surprised to find these terrible conditions in which black people lived in this country. But we put actual faces on the problems by going out through the country and by the work that the commission did. And we also saw what hostility there was in the country. We met right away after the president appointed us, and we set up a series of 20 days of formal hearings where we heard witnesses all the way from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. And then we broke up into teams and visited riot cities ourselves. And we said that that the terrible conditions gave rise to these protests and riots, that any spark could set off the violence. The underlying causes were racism and poverty. The most famous words of the commission were these: our country is moving toward 2 nations, one black, one white, separate and unequal. And we recommended new national programs, particularly around jobs and education. It was controversial. My own father, a small farmer in southwestern Oklahoma, he said, what you're saying is that a person like me ought to pay more taxes to help poor black people who are rioting in Detroit. That's the way a lot of people heard it. President Johnson was convinced that there was some organization, some conspiracy, some planning behind these riots which had occurred in cities all over the country, large and small. Later on, the president began to change his mind. We made progress, serious progress, on virtually every aspect of race and poverty in the country for about 10 years after the Kerner report. For example, we were very steadily reducing poverty in the country. The findings, of course, are still quite good, and the recommendations as well. You're not going to have the kind of stable society of self-esteem unless we have a good deal more equality in this country. America is founded really on the idea that all of us are created equal, and we ought to have equal opportunities for the good life. That was certainly not true then. It's not true now.
Well, welcome back. I hope you got some insight in what this senator said. He's saying that we still have to say we had those problems then. America is still have racial issues then, and it still has it today. He said nothing has changed. There have been some improvement, but as you can see just listening to the news, seeing neo-Nazis and white supremacists walking the streets of America or parading with these Confederate flags, even in January 6th in the halls of the Capitol. No Confederate army made it to the Capitol during the Civil War. But that ideology, people who believe that ideology were in there on January 6th of 2021. That should tell you something. It's not about, we got to understand that this history. We got to understand that problem that we have as people. I'm gonna show you some other videos, pictures of things that you need to understand why people arose in what he's, just like the Senator Harris told you in this video. But you got to see it with your own eyes. The first thing I want to show you is that report, okay? This is the report that came out, I think, on February 29th of 1968. It was a leap year, February 29th. And this was a bestseller. It sold over 200, it was like 246 pages. So they did a thorough report. And they came up with that conclusion at the end of the report that there's two America, one black, white at the time, separate but unequal. We always had two Americas. I even add to it, we had a caste system based on laws that were put in place from colonial times. That's a caste system that was established. What you're being taught, and the reason they don't want us to be taught black history in places like Florida or here in Texas, that's the Republican nationalist type of ideology, one with the states' rights, the same type of ideology of the Confederacy. You must understand that even though the shooting war ended in 1865 and a peace treaty or a surrender of troops happened at Appomattox in 1865, the war just transferred itself into the political arena. There's the old saying that goes there that war is politics with bloodshed, and politics is war without bloodshed. The political war has been going on since the so-called end of the shooting war of the civil of that thing we call the Civil War. That's over 150 years. The same ideas, the same perception of people that look like us, you find it alive and well in America. But I want to show you some images of that Detroit riot, why people would just, if you look at this first image, you see a tank. You can't get any divisive of that when you have a tank rolling down streets of a major city in America in the 1960s. 1960s, You can't compare what's going on today with the assassinations and the problems that would happen in the 60s. You know, that's why when you don't vote, the people who suffered and the people who died to get you to vote had to deal with stuff like this. Let's go on. There's another vision of the tank. This is in Detroit in July of 1967 when black people just said, we had enough. It didn't take enough. That's like he said in that video, it just needed a spark. Because for decades upon decades, we were hung, we were lynched, we were prevented from being true citizenship. We were second-class citizens. We weren't allowed to vote even though we had the 15th Amendment in the 1800s. Every time we tried to establish a community like Black Wall Street, it was burnt to the ground. Unemployment. We were redlining. How could we say that we are American citizens when we weren't giving the proper access as all citizens? It still had that same mentality that the doctrine of Maryland, which says that nobody black, that's a law that came out in 1638 that says that no black person is going to benefit from the fruits of the labor that colony would produce. Even though they were the slaves who did the work, they would not benefit from the fruits. And when you do that and be patient for over 100 years since you were freed, this is in 1967, we were so-called given the 13th Amendment in 1865, and the 14th Amendment, which made us citizens, and we still were asking the same thing that we're asking today. Liberty, criminal justice. The Kerner Commission found, you know, the 13th Amendment, if you ever read it, at the last sentence it says that there shall be no thing called slavery, but only if you are, in America, only if you're accused of a crime under some kind of law. But what did the ex-Confederates do? They created what was called black codes in response. That white backlash again just won't leave us alone. We were supposed to be given 40 acres and a mule. Came out of when General Sherman made his march to the sea and landed in Savannah. He gathered all the black leaders of in Savannah and asked them what they needed. And there was a reverend who came up with to say that we just need land, okay? And to be left alone because of what was going on. It was a black man who came up with that idea of giving these black people who just came out of, who was in enslavement even at that time, that we just want land. And there was an order called Special Order 15 that Sherman wrote, which gave all the land from South Carolina all the way down to Jackson, Florida, along the Atlantic coastline where Hilton Head is and all those. They were supposed to be in the 40-acre lots. And the mule came from the Army mules that the Union Army had, and it was near the end of the war, and they were going to give them one of those mules and some feed to compensate for the 246 years of free labor. Okay, well, let's go on to this. You think that young black boy was traumatized? This is not Fallujah. This is not some World War II show. Soldiers in liberating a French city. Is right here in America. That was Detroit. Traumatized. You wonder why? Look, and the problem that was said by the Kerner Commission was people like that, cops. Same thing that we're having today, problems with police. Let's go on. The gentleman, Senator Harris, talked about his father, who was in the Midwest, and a white person that was actually poor, and he made that comment about paying his taxes for them to burn it down. That's how they viewed, and he said a lot of white people thought about it like that. We got to speak truth. But those people were also paying their taxes, and not getting the services, not getting any of the money that the purpose of taxes is for it to could be accumulated and doled out fairly to the people that pay it. We weren't getting that. Look. Let's go back to that previous one. I want to go on there. This is American soldiers in the streets of Detroit because looking at these buildings because there were people shooting at them. People were pissed off. We were not always the docile people we're made, to. In a lot of the movies we were shown from a white-facing perspective. Yes, sir, boss. No, sir, no. These were people who fought in Vietnam, fought in World War II, came back, did not get the benefits of the GI Bill, even though it was written in 1947 and all these things. But when it came to black people trying to move to the suburbs, they were denied access. This is what we were not getting the same services and benefits all other citizens of the United States were given, even after 100 years of fighting the wars and coming home to lynchings and murder and assassination like Medgar Evers, or getting killed, or your community being wiped out because you have the audacity of making money and showing that you can do these things. I'm going to show you a list in the next show of what I'm talking about. But I'm saying this is what was going on with Detroit. This brother right here in his well-dressed, angry, he's throwing a shoe. That's how you can't get that angry for no reason. We're not born violent. Yet because of the justification for slavery, where we were considered animals, we were counted as animals with the census until 1870. For 246 years, we were in a caste below the white caste, just like in India, where you had the Brahmins on top, and at the bottom you have the untouchables, and in between other castes, and no two could come. That was the same thing going on here in America. We get this origin story of the land of the free and liberty, and look what America done for you. No, we've been loyal to America as people of African descent, but has America been loyal to us? And that's the question. We didn't storm any Capitol building in the 150 years since the Civil War. When have we done that? When have we prevented white Americans from going into a particular community? When have we done that? When have we put that you cannot come in our community and drink at our water fountains? But yet the dialogue has been twisted to make us the ones that are violent. We didn't take Native people land, you see? So we got to speak the truth about the history here in America. That's why you got people like Governor DeSantis preventing black and white children to understand the truth of that history. In order to understand the history, you must. That's the only thing that can light up the present moment, so you can have an understanding of what's going on. I want to go back to that last image. I want you to think about that. That is not Beirut. You're looking at. That soldier is in the streets of America, and you think we are divisive today? You got to understand and question everything you're told in the media. This is what we have to deal with over and over and over again. I think that's the last of the videos. Oh yeah, we got something else. This is what the Kerner Commission said. Pent up frustration boiled over in many poor African American neighborhoods during the mid to late 60s, like I said, setting off riots that rampage out of control from block to block, burning, battering, and ransacking property. It was just bent up rage for decades of abuse. Neighborhood residents and law enforcement operatives endured shocking random injuries or details. But that's how you see it from a white perspective. From our perspective, it's just, well, we just pissed off, fed up. Many Americans blame the rise on the outside agitators. They, the woke community like you're hearing today, or Black Lives Matter, some nonsense like that, or young black men who represent a largest and most visible group of rioters. Yeah, our soldiers. But in March of 1968, after the Kerner Commission came out on February of 1968, the Kerner Commission turned those assumptions upside down, declaring white racism, not black anger, turned the key that unlocked urban turmoil. White racism, the same thing we're dealing with today. Let's go to the next one. I think we have time to see what's the bad policing practice. Duh. A flawed justice system, same problem we have today. Unscrupulous consumer credit practice, poor or inadequate housing, high unemployment, voter suppression, other culturally embedded forms of racial discrimination all converge to propel violent upheavals on the streets of African American neighborhoods who just had enough. North and South, East and West. As black unrest arose, inadequately trained police officers at National Guard are not only inadequately trained police officers, it's racist thought process that's been passed on from generation to generation to generation, established by law. From the time of colonial time, from the time of the Constitution, from the time that brought us into the Civil War. There was an image of black people to justify what was being done to them. When you enslave another human being, kidnap them, you got to say it's their fault. They're violent. When you lynch a black man, he is threat. And today, black men are still looked at threat when a cop shoots you within seconds because they were fearing for their lives. This is what we still have to deal with. And until you face that truth, until you understand the history, we'll never move forward. White backlash has always been a problem. And we got to face that. Unless you participate in the healing, white America, of America, and stop being complacent and vote the people who are perpetuating this crazy type of racist attitude by law and the lies that are being fed, just like the last president we had to deal with, who allowed this kind of thinking to come out of the hiding as it did. We're not going to deal with that. There's books that'll tell you. These are two books that you need to read. The Kerner Report. But I'm going to stop it here, and then I'll go to the last portion of this dialogue in part 4 next. So I do this for the honor of our ancestors. So until next time, peace, Hotep, bye-bye.